Here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Women in Action Huddle's event called More Than a March, Rights After Roe. This event is being recorded, as you know, and as we always do before we start a huddle, I invite you to join me in drawing a community or a communal breath together so that we all land in this space aware and in observation of each other. And as part of our coming together, we also hold a sacred and safe space for the people who are our speakers tonight with great gratitude. Thank you and welcome. So we thank you for coming to this Zoom event because we know how busy everybody is right now. The election is weighing heavily on many of us. There are protests going on as we speak. So I thank you because I really, if you're like me, there's a lot we need to learn about and be educated about this really, really important subject, especially given all the changes that have happened. So tonight in this brief hour together, we're going to be learning about and talking with three key players on the front lines of reproductive rights and care for women, especially in our region, but also nationwide. We're going to be talking with the founders and executive directors of 2 abortion funds and an abortion provider to learn about their face-to-face work to protect and administer reproductive care to all women. We want to know what it's like out there right now. We want to know what's happening after the abolishment of Roe versus Wade. And we also, most importantly, because we are the Women in Action Huddle, want to know how we can help and get involved. So in the last 5 or 10 minutes of the meeting, Debbie Hart-Klein, who's strategic team of the Women in Action Huddle, will give us some really good advice and guidelines about what we can do pre-election in the last 2.5 weeks that we have. So I'm going to dive right in with our first speaker, who is Josie Pinto. She's the co-founder and the executive director of Reproductive Freedom Fund of New Hampshire. It was founded in 2019, and since then, this is extraordinary figures to me, but more than $130,000 in abortion care has been given, and over 300 in-state patients have been served by this fund. So along with her key role at RFF, Josie is also an adjunct professor in reproductive justice in the Women's Studies Department of the University of New Hampshire. And she's a master's in public health candidate at the Dartmouth Institute for Health Policy and Clinical Practice. As if that wasn't enough, she's also a full spectrum doula. So Josie, unmute yourself and welcome. And I want to thank you publicly for all you've done to help gather both Feyla and Kimika from Tides and Christy from HealthQ tonight. It was really, your knowledge in the field that helped this really come together.
Yeah, well, we don't do this work alone, so it felt really important to bring them into the conversation.
So when we first met to discuss abortion funds, I was stunned at what I didn't know. And so what I learned from you is that abortion funds are circumventing the harsh realities that we're facing today. And actually the conversation gave me a lot of hope. So let's dive in and begin with, if you would, a description like who is reproductive rights. Who are you? Who is RFF New Hampshire?
Yeah, so the Reproductive Freedom Fund of New Hampshire is the only statewide abortion fund in New Hampshire. I founded the organization back in 2019 after moving to New Hampshire from Massachusetts, where there at the time were 3, now 4 abortion funds, and was really shocked to learn that New Hampshire didn't have a statewide fund serving them, and that it was actually the Massachusetts funds that were largely carrying the state of New Hampshire at the time. So I had moved up to New Hampshire for a job at Planned Parenthood, working on the political side of Planned Parenthood. And then after that job ended, I got a job at one of our 2 independent providers, a feminist health center called Equality Health Center. And it was my job to answer the phones for the patients scheduling their abortions. And pretty much every day I was talking to a patient that didn't know how they were going to afford the cost of the abortion, which for those that don't know is roughly $500. But past, 10, 12 weeks, that cost can really skyrocket. We've paid for patients up to $3,000 or $4,000 and, having to get to DC or all over. So the costs can really go up, but there was just this huge gap in New Hampshire that wasn't getting met. And based on my organizing skills and experience, both on the health side and the political side of repro work, I just kind of thought someone had to do it. So here I am, and I'm so glad that we did. We officially launched in February of 2021. So we're really a pretty baby organization. We're approaching our 2-year anniversary.
Josie, do you, are abortions legal in New Hampshire?
Yes,
Are they available?
Yes. So here in New Hampshire, we have a 24-week abortion ban, which isn't that different from you all, but I will say ours is different in that when it was passed, it had virtually no exceptions. So no exceptions for fatal fetal anomalies. So if the child isn't going to exist, be alive after birth, no exceptions for that. And then no exceptions for rape or incest. So really just a very harmful legislation that was very exclusive towards people in really tough situations. And we fought back and we made it a little bit better, but we do still have some pretty harsh restrictions on the books here. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, New Hampshire is a very interesting state politically in that it's Republican controlled statewide. So our state house, Senate, executive council, and governor are all Republican right now. But we have all Democratic federal representation in Congress.
Oh,
so bit of a mixed bag here.
And so, how big is your team? And I read on your website that you have team members that they have specialities. So, when a client comes to you, depending on what her needs are, you will direct her to one of your team members. Can you take us through who your team is?
Yeah, sure. So we were an all volunteer organization for a really long time. And then in January, I came on as full-time executive director. And then following the Roe decision and some pretty good fundraising, we actually hired 2 more full-time staff members. So we're a 3 full-time staff member team. And then we also have a board, which used to really run our organization, what I call a working board. Now we're more moving towards a traditional board structure where we meet monthly and, they have some duties in the world of like oversight and fundraising and stuff like that. But for the day-to-day operations, it's our core staff. And so we actually have a hotline coordinator named Autumn, who's really lovely. She's got her bachelor's in social work. She handles all of our client communications. She handles all talking to clinics and other abortion funds. Of course, she manages a team of volunteers on the hotline. It's really important to us that we have volunteers carrying out the bulk of our work, but she's the one who really, handles all sorts of coordinating travel and talking to other funds. So we're just so grateful to have her because I could not be doing that nitty gritty day-to-day funding and all the other stuff required of being an ED. So really grateful we've been able to expand.
So take us through, if we were a client, how do we find you and how does it work once we do?
Yeah, great question. So most of our patients access us directly through clinics. So, HealthQ, who we have on this call, is a great example. Say we have a patient who lives anywhere in New Hampshire and they're going down to Haverhill for their appointment. Basically, as they're setting up the appointment, the person at the clinic is going to talk to them about, well, this is how much the abortion costs. Can you afford that? And if they express hardship or maybe have an income that's pretty low, the clinic worker is going to say, here's a phone number you can call, they can help you. So most people are coming to us via direct referral from the clinics. Occasionally we get people coming to us before just because they already know they can't afford it. And so they're nervous and they want to be reassured that we'll definitely fund them. But in order to actually confirm funding with us, we want to confirm with the clinic that they have an appointment on the books. So we do have them have that set up before we confirm it, but we're there to help them along the way. So after they've talked to the clinic and set up their appointment, they go through a really brief intake call with us, usually under 10 minutes, where we really just ask the basic questions that we need. And we it's really important to us. We start every conversation saying, we don't need to know why you need the money or why you got pregnant. We are just here to help. And I can assure you, we are going to fully fund your procedure. I just have a couple of questions for you. And that's so that, we're there if they want to share those things, but there's no pressure to prove anything to us, prove that they don't have money, because we feel like at that point, they've already jumped through enough hoops and we are really just there to support them. We don't want to be yet another barrier to access. So we have,
sorry.
yeah, no, ask your question.
Do you hook them up with a specific clinic to have
So
the
usually
abortion?
they come after. So I would
Oh.
say 99% of our callers heard
Oh,
from us from the clinic that they already scheduled that. Just
I see.
occasionally they'll call us, making sure that they can definitely get funding before scheduling somewhere. Like they might call and say, if I have my appointment here, will you cover it?
Yeah. And I assume that part of the conversation has to be how far along in the pregnancy
Yep.
they are.
Yep.
And is there, well, it must be very, very hard if a woman is too far along to have an abortion. Does that ever happen?
Well, it's not that they're too far along to have an abortion. It's that they're too far along to have an abortion in New Hampshire or Massachusetts, but we can get them somewhere that they can. So most likely we'll be working with, they're called DuPont Clinic in DC. Unfortunately, there are very few abortion providers in the third trimester, but they do exist. After the third trimester, we're typically seeing patients who are having abortions because of things like fatal fetal anomalies. So the knowledge that their baby won't survive childbirth. But yeah, I would say up until 17, 18 weeks, we're usually seeing them go somewhere in New Hampshire or somewhere in Massachusetts. Those are commonly what we see.
So I know you're not necessarily like, you're not a provider, so the door isn't open and people aren't coming in
Right.
necessarily, but are you feeling or seeing are you experiencing any pushback, any harassment?
So I think that's an interesting question because it comes in waves and we felt really lucky that we haven't recently, but I also think, unfortunately it's because their side is sort of winning. They got what they wanted. So here in New Hampshire, that's really not the big focal point of the right. Right now they're focused on like trans kids in schools and they're going really hard after that because that's their new fight now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. So I wouldn't say we face a lot of hostility, but at the same time, I've also had to take a lot of personal protections to make sure my address isn't publicly listed on the internet. And, so I've done things just to kind of protect myself in this field. But the backlash has actually, I would say, died down largely since the Roe decision. And, really the attacks come out in the legislature. So it's really in the horrifying bills that they introduced here in New Hampshire. So just 2 days ago, we had a hearing that would allow biological fathers to intervene and stop someone from having an abortion if they're able to prove that they're the biological father. So that's where the damage comes out, is they are introducing really, really scary bills and will continue to 6-week abortion bans, all kinds of things. So I think that's really where the fight is.
Yep. So I have two sort of final questions to the interview, but then at the end of everyone, we'll have Q&A for you as well. Great. So the two things I'd like to know is, are you hopeful? Are you hopeful about the future and what we can do? Because when I went on your website, it's very clear that we can buy merchandise, we can volunteer, or we can send money, we can donate. But if there's anything more that you can give the Huddle and those interested in helping more, it would be great.
Yeah, I actually am pretty hopeful. And that's because, we know that Roe was never really the end all be all of what we wanted. It was really argued pretty poorly based on privacy, excluded a lot of people. And, I am hopeful that eventually we can get an opportunity to set laws more based on things like social justice and racial justice and really moving past this right to privacy and individual rights, but really more of a collective right to bodily autonomy. And I'm also really hopeful because of abortion funds and specifically the wisdom of the Black women behind abortion funds and Black women in the 1990s created the concept of reproductive justice, which really goes way beyond reproductive rights and fights for not just the right to not be pregnant, but the right to parent children in healthy and safe communities. And so it's really because of the wisdom of Black women that we do have 90 abortion funds existing in this country right now. And abortion funds really are the backbone of why people are going to be okay. They might have to travel farther. It might be a lot harder, but at the end of the day, we are here. We all work really closely together, and we're making sure people get seen. Without abortion funds, I would feel a lot less hope. So that is what gives me hope, is getting to work with people like Feyla and Kimika and the incredible feminist providers who have been doing this for decades. It's a really strong and really beautiful community that we get to be part of.
So what can we do? How can we help?
I have to say donating, only because as an abortion fund, you have to understand all we do is give out money. So getting money in is always going to be the priority. Other than that, really just raising awareness is huge. I know that's so cliche, but I really think a lot of the work is in like sharing your own abortion stories. For those of you maybe that had pre-Roe abortions or newly after Roe abortions, it's really impactful just to talk to people in your life, particularly maybe people who are less supportive. There's this great phrase that the National Network of Abortion Funds likes to say, which is that everybody loves somebody that's had an abortion. You can have a huge effect on someone that cares about you and how they feel about abortion just by sharing your own, by testifying in front of legislature. So if anyone does want to come up to New Hampshire and ever get active, it sounds like some of you are doing political work up there. Like, that's really great. I think that's really where we need to keep our focus, is on these horrible bills coming up. And so I would say that donating, we've kind of had to scale back volunteer opportunities. We got so many people interested, and we've taken on probably over 50 new volunteers. So we're a little bit maxed out right now in terms of how many, we have people signed up to give rides and signed up to give emotional support, all kinds of things. And we have more volunteers than the requests we're getting in, which is a great problem to have. But the only reason why I'm not saying, here's a million things that you can do. But if anyone has any interest in raising money for us, that will never cease to be the most important thing. So I will drop the link for that in case you're interested.
Okay, perfect. If I was your mother, I'd be so proud of you. I am proud.
Ask her. She's here.
All right. Thank you so much, Josie. It's a pleasure to talk to you. So we are going to move now to our second abortion fund, who is present, called Tides for Reproductive Freedom. And with us tonight, we have two of the founders, Kimika Ross and Feyla McNamara, with us. So what I'd like to say is that Tides is the first abortion fund in Massachusetts that is founded and led by queer, Black, and Indigenous people. That just makes my heart like sing to hear that. So what an extraordinary moment you all are in reproductive care. Really, I was struck by your story, your expertise, the dedication that I found in your mission statements and on your website. So please, let's begin by asking you both to tell us about Tides and about how you are reaching the communities you so want to serve. So whoever wants to start, Kimika or Feyla?
I can kick us off and then toss it to Feyla.
Hi, Kimika. Nice to have you. Nice.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Kimika. I use she, they pronouns. And I'm a co-founder with Tides. So Tides is a passion project, I guess, in some terms, of our collective group. We started off as 7 folks coming together with previous relationships to abortion funds in Massachusetts, and seeing that there was some, and wanting to integrate more social justice and reproductive justice into abortion funds, like the structure of how we give out funds and how we connect with community, wanting to be more intentional in those ways. We faced a lot of barriers trying to do that in some of our original funds. because well, we faced some barriers there. And so we came together to try and figure out how to center these things that are important to us as individuals, and that we know of, and we know that are important to our communities that we are a part of, that often aren't centered in the conversations that abortion funds are having in terms of serving community. And so we put together this project, and we are here. We like officially came together in 2018. We got our 501c3 status. My brain is like blinking now. I think it was this year. Am I messing that up, Feyla? Okay, yes, this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's exciting for us. And so what we're doing to connect with communities right now, we are in the midst of a listening project and a community survey that we're going to be launching, where we're just in a stance of listening now. So we're connecting with the other funds in Massachusetts, connecting with funds across the Northeast, and also starting to connect with funds that are in the South, and in our southern region of the United States, to us, because we know that folks are going to be coming here to Massachusetts, where we have more services available to help folks lead the lives that they want to lead. And so yeah, we're in a listening stance now to figure out how do we best meet these new needs, particularly now that Roe is gone, particularly now with the Dobbs decision. And so just trying to figure out how do we progress. And again, just like echoing Josie, knowing that like Roe wasn't the goal, right? Wasn't serving,
Right.
wasn't allowing us to meet the needs that we needed, because there are still folks for whom abortion was out of reach for. And so now we have a chance to start from scratch and figure out a way to make sure that everyone from the get-go has the ability to get the services that they seek.
So you'll be able to actually help women from other parts of the country.
Yes, that's the part. That's
Fantastic.
One of our goals, as well as making some formal networking connections within Massachusetts as well.
Yes.
And
in the Our Story portion of your website, I was so drawn to it because it feels like a mission that I'm in complete alignment with. I'm just going to read a little bit, okay? It says, as the newest abortion fund in Massachusetts, and as a group of people who came together with the mission of serving those that are not being reached, we consider every single person who might want an abortion and lives in a state where they cannot get one, our community. Massachusetts cannot rest easy in the knowledge of its wealth of funding, resources, and providers, plugging its ears to the cries of the rest of the country. We at Tides firmly believe the fall of Roe marks Massachusetts' responsibility to the rest of the country. I mean, that is everything to me. That's just, so the two key tenets are who is our community and what our responsibility is. And I just couldn't agree with you more. And I wonder if you could speak more to it, that as Massachusetts residents, we have an obligation to use our privilege to help those around the country that can't get the help they need. I don't know what the question is in that. I only know that I wanted to talk to you about it because I think it's a beautiful mission that speaks to so much. Yeah. All right. So.
Paula, I've got something to say to that.
Yes.
That's, if it's helpful, if it's okay to jump in and speak to that. I think something that is very important to the co-founders of Tides is that when we talk about responsibility, we're really talking about strategizing, right? We're talking about the responsibility to strategize and to redistribute wealth from Massachusetts and resources from Massachusetts, but never to act in a form of like saviorism. So it's about this balance of knowing strategically, legislatively, we have a lot of privilege around abortion and abortion access here in the state, right? We have Medicaid that covers abortion. We have, 4 abortion funds now, which is, a lot. And also we have a lot of people who are willing to volunteer and people who are willing to donate money, which is really wonderful. And when we talk about community, right, borders they're imaginary, you know, as like people working from picking apart colonial constructs. Our communities expand beyond Massachusetts. I have family who go beyond Massachusetts. You know, my people's territory is beyond Massachusetts. Like, this is a real conversation around what does community actually look like, and what is the structure of community? So that's just to be very clear in our mission statement. It's important to be in conversation, like Kimika was saying, with the communities that go beyond just right here in Massachusetts, but never to act as like a saviorism, really to be in concert with.
Yeah, I get it. So how did you find each other? How did you decide to do this? I mean, I assume that you were doing other things and then all of a sudden you're doing this. How did it happen? Feyla, jump in, and then Kimika can.
I was going to say, Kimika, did you want to kick us off, or you want me to?
I can kick us off.
Right.
I was a part of previously I was a volunteer with the Eastern Massachusetts Abortion Fund, which is based out of Boston. And Feyla was a volunteer with the Abortion Rights and Freedom Abortion Rights Fund, Abortion Rights Fund of Westminster.
I can't remember them either. I
always
mess it up. It's really
it's
hard.
a little thing for me. So both of our funds are a part of the National Network of Abortion Funds. And so the National Network put on a convening of funds that service the Northeast area. So that goes from Maine down to to Virginia, I think, or Maryland, down that far. So all of our funds were there, and we connected because I hadn't had the opportunity to connect with folks from the Western Massachusetts Fund, our former, just because I was located in Boston. And so we connected there, and we were trying to figure out ways for our funds to even work together, because at the time funds, we collaborated on funding for callers, but we weren't in community with each other. And so we kind of like started doing that project, and within our funds ourselves, we were trying to create some change. And we're just commemorating, I guess, over that journey of trying to undo, to deconstruct these the white supremacy structures that kind of stand in the way of us being able to do this work in a compassionate and community-centered way. And so we connected through that struggle and was like, hey, we can create something that does center these things, instead of trying to change these structures that aren't willing to change. And I can talk.
So how many of you are there?
There's 4 of us currently. There's myself, Kimika, Luanji De La Torre, and Kara Callahan. And so each of us bring our own expertise to Tides. So to be very clear, we are brand new at this point. We got the 501c3 in May of this year, so not even quite 6 months yet. But we've been building this program and vision for the last 4 years, really trying to think about, what is the right way to construct something like this in Massachusetts and to go beyond.
Feyla, have you raised money yet?
We have raised some money. We have recently received a $10,000 grant from the Boston Foundation, which was really excellent and very exciting. They have a reproductive justice fund and reached out to us actually about applying for it. And so that was really lovely.
Nice.
And really, I mean, if folks are wondering, where is the money that we do fundraise going right now, is going to go to that community scan that Kimika was talking about. So we're trying to be very mindful about how we reach out to our communities in Massachusetts. And it's going to be in the form of a barrier survey. What have people experienced in terms of access to abortions, barriers and access to abortions? But we want to go beyond you know, just asking folks in clinics. We want to go to harm reduction centers. We want to go to, you know, language centers. We'd like to go into, you know, even schools, if that's a possibility, working with school nurses, just anywhere where we can have conversations with people who have tried to reach abortion services and what barriers they've experienced.
Wow. That's fabulous. That is so fabulous. So, my darlings, how can the huddle be of help? What do you most need right now?
I mean, I think similar to what Josie said, donations are always really helpful. I can drop links for a couple of
Please.
different ways y'all can donate. So the abortion, or the National Network of Abortion Funds, has one setup where if you donate to support abortion funds, you actually donate to 90 different abortion funds, and it's split evenly between all of us. So that's a way to sort of, if you're like, I don't know who to give to, that's a way to give to all of us. And it's really excellent.
Wonderful.
Here's Tide's link specifically.
All
I'm gonna
right,
put it
great.
for you. And then we also just launched a bonfire campaign where you can get a snazzy shirt that says abortion is healthcare. We also have hoodies now as well. And that's
Cool.
going through just in time for the fall, right, in the winter.
Mhm.
So those are 3 different ways that you can donate. And then
Okay.
the other piece that I think we'd be interested in is if folks have community spaces where you would like these surveys to be, and you have recommendations for us. I think, you know, this is an ask to y'all are our community. We're wondering where are the spaces where you'd like to see these surveys? Because we believe that people's, you know, time is valuable, the surveys would be incentivized. So we haven't decided exactly yet how to do that. But
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch about that.
yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
that would be awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time, and stand by because there will be questions. So, and they're coming in now, but we're gonna save them till the end. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just didn't know if Kimika, if you had anything you wanted to add to how folks can help.
No, I would just echo what Josie said earlier. In addition to donating, is just talking about abortions, sharing stories about abortions, particularly now of the stories the horrific stories around folks that are having fetuses with anomalies who aren't able to make decisions for whether they can terminate their pregnancies or not, and those stories, and folks having to travel outside of state, outside of their home states to get abortion. So just
Yeah.
continuing to uplift those stories and make sure our communities and the folks around us are aware.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you both so very much. How informative. All right, we are going to pivot now to an abortion provider. Christy Monast is here from HealthQ, and she is the executive director. HealthQ is an abortion provider and reproductive and sexual care medical practice with offices in Beverly, Haverhill, and Lawrence. Thank God for you. Christy is an educator and has been an activist since childhood. I really related to this, who was supported by her family to challenge the norms. Aren't we lucky that we grew up in families like that? She says, I'm not a loud activist, but I am persistent and consistent. And we all know that's what it takes. Being bold and building my career to include sexuality education and healthcare delivery has been my best reward. I love your acknowledging that consistency and persistency is so important in this. So we have a lot of questions for you. Let's begin with the basics. How long has HealthQ been in business, and how long have you been providing abortions?
So HealthQ,
welcome.
hi, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be part of this group tonight and learning of you all, actually. So thank you for the invitation. HealthQ is formerly known as Health Quarters. We just sort of shortened our name during the pandemic, so that may have slipped by a few folks. But we're 51 years old and started as a Title X family planning provider back in the 70s. Have been doing abortion care since 2017. So we're not a baby organization, and we're not baby in doing abortion care, but it hasn't been that long that we've been doing abortion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, have you noticed, anything, what's changed since Roe died?
Yeah. I would say the first question that we usually get asked about what's changed is, are we seeing an increase in volume? And the answer is no. And I think that's across the state that we're not seeing a significant increase. And to Kimika's point, I think that's yet, right? I actually am new to HealthQ. I moved here in January of 22 to become the executive director, and I came from Illinois. So I have a bigger perspective of what's happening in the country and connections to learn what's happening around the country in response to this decision. So we did see some patients from Texas after SB 8 was passed and enforced. And then Oklahoma, we had like one person from there. So there's not this significant increase, but for folks who have a connection to Massachusetts for some reason, whether it be family or they came and did education in the state, or for some reason this is a place that they feel like, oh, I could maybe go there and get access, they have done that. I think we will see more of an increase of people coming as we see the shifts continuing to happen in the country and the overflow from one state to another state where people cannot get access, trying to go to get access. Their waiting periods are becoming, just to get an appointment, very significant. So I think that Massachusetts at some point, especially because we have access to I don't want to say public transportation, but the airport in Boston and other ways that people can get here, that this may be a destination to help shorten their time that they would have to wait.
So what's happening in Illinois? What's happening in that neck of the woods?
They're overwhelmed. We used to call it, before all this happened, like the donut hole or the Blue Island in the Red Sea. And if you look at a map of what has changed for just legal access to abortion since the decision in June, the colors on the map are all one color around Illinois, and they're different color than Illinois is. So a lot of folks are traveling into Illinois to access abortion care. The sites that were already set up saw a significant increase in their volume. There are new sites opening. There's one that just had opened a new site from Tennessee. In Tennessee, they had to stop seeing abortion patients, but they're still delivering other care. But now they just last week saw their first patients in a location in Illinois. So there is an increase in provider base in the state as well, which is starting to help alleviate some of the overflow. But they're saying that the wait time for people to get appointments is about 4 to 6 weeks at this point.
Wow. Do you, I'm going to pivot a little bit toward, do you train your providers in how to deal with angry anti-abortion people? Do you get protesters at your locations in Haverhill and Beverly and Lawrence?
Great question. So we have consistent protesters in Beverly. We do not really have protesters show up in Lawrence or Haverhill, which is a little surprising, although the Lawrence site, not so much, because one of our strategies was to locate our facilities inside of a complex that makes it hard for protesters to present a barrier. So I think in Lawrence, they just don't even know we're there, honestly. The Beverly folks, though, they do come quite consistently. Right now, the anti-choice, anti-abortion folks have a campaign called the 40 Days of Life. They do that twice a year. And we're in the middle of the second one. So somebody has been outside of our building. Well, we're in the Cumming Center. So they're outside of the Cumming Center every single day. Do we train our staff? Yes, we do. We have a couple of security trainings a year. To Josie's point, we all go through removing our names and shoring up our security, our own personal security. But we also have to have training about if you get something and in the mail at your home, which does happen. If you're leaving the office, don't leave alone. How to not engage with protesters that are outside. So we do that actively every year.
Yeah. So I was struck by you have a lot of staff on your website, and I liked that in terms of security, that everyone is caricaturized in a way with a drawing and not a photograph, and only first names. I thought, you know, this is what we have to do to protect the people who are providing reproductive services to women. But on your website, your mission states, everyone who works here does so with the uncompromising belief that each and every person has the right to control their body and their life. We are here to give you a voice and empower your decisions. We will support you, we will guide you, and we will provide you with the information that you need to make the best choices for you. So reproductive freedom, reproductive health care is one of our most basic forms of health. What are your best case scenarios for hope for the future? How are you feeling? Are you feeling under the gun, so to speak, or are you feeling like we can do this if we join forces? And thank you, by the way, for saying anti-abortion and not pro-life, because if we could only change even that much vocabulary, I feel like it would be so important.
Mm-hmm.
How did it ever, I mean, that was in my day, that was pre-Roe when it was pro-life, and how it has stuck, and just it's made it so difficult to be clear about it, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Change, if anything, you can change with your vernacular. One thing that would be a good thing to change is that it really is a campaign that has been very well strategized since the 70s to make abortion illegal. So it is about being anti-abortion and not pro-life. And I think sometimes folks that in that community use the term pro-life don't even demonstrate that they are completely, right? Because they're not making protections for all life. And a tenet of the reproductive justice movement is that we should be able to live safely in communities, and they're not supporting that either. So I think being very clear about it being anti-abortion is important.
Has it been difficult to staff your clinics, your medical practices? I mean, it takes a courageous person to work there.
It does. And I think I'll share two things. And this is not a lot out of school, but a little out of school, because I shared already that we just started providing services in 2017. We lost staff doing that because there were staff that were like, I just can't do this. And the reasons vary, but it is hard to work in a community or a position that you know is under attack consistently, or that has a lot of stigma associated with it. Where going to work and, you know, going out to socialize afterwards, people are like, where do you work? What do you do? And you're like, can I answer this question safely? You know, the person on the airplane that's like, oh, what kind of a conference are you going to? And you're like, I can't tell you. It is hard to work in this community. So we had lost some people, and I want to make clear that I really value that you asked that question. Even folks that I can support this, but somebody in my family doesn't, or it's just too hard. It has been hard to continually keep staffed as well. There is a high burnout rate, and I'm going to say that for all of healthcare right now. And, you know, we are just out of the pandemic. So staff are really burned out in general in healthcare. But when you add something like this into the mix, especially this being the change of legality and the discourse and the stigma and this polarization that we have in the local community and in the world, it is hard to get people to work.
So finally, before we break for the questions and answers, thank you. Are there volunteer opportunities at HealthQ for people who might want to support women having abortions, or are there volunteer opportunities?
Yeah, so unfortunately, no, at the moment, to I think the points that were made by both Josie and then Kimika and Feyla, like there have been an outpouring of people wanting to volunteer. Unfortunately, for a couple of reasons, especially security, you know, having a lot of people just showing up doing random things with us, and random, not unimportant, but just not being consistent can be a challenge for bringing in volunteers. So we do have volunteers. We have volunteers doing development work with us, doing organizational activities as far as outreach go. And we also work and want to expand our doula program. So I think in the future, that will be a way that we could have folks actively engaged with the health centers, is doing some doula work. Outside of that, it's really about fundraising. So helping us
Wow.
fundraise, but I actually really would rather have you all support the funds in fundraising, because we're doing okay with the revenue that we're bringing in at the moment.
My heart is just so, like, it's bursting with gratitude for you and for Feyla and Kimika and Josie for what you're doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
So we are going to hand the microphone over to Debbie Hart-Klein, who I saw a lot of questions coming into the chat, and she's going to help us. And if you have any further, please put it into the chat or raise your hand function on the Zoom call. Thanks, Debbie.
You want me to do the chat, or I'll just say first a few minutes about what we can do from on the political side of things. You know, we've only got a few more weeks till the midterms, and the best thing we can do to help protect the rights that we have and limit some of the restrictions that the Republicans are trying to pass is to elect as many Democrats as we can, and to work between now and the election on swing states. I know a lot of you on the phone and on the call, and you are familiar with iRise, but for everyone who's not, Indivisible Rise is a local chapter here of Indivisible, the national political activist group. And another hat I wear is to help lead that group. We have weekly action. We have stuff going on every day, and I will put a link in the chat to the actions that we have. At this point, everything is phone banking, texting, and canvassing. We have a unique opportunity, being so close to New Hampshire, to canvass in a swing state. We at iRise, we focus on 5 states, but I want to highlight 2 that I think are the best ones to focus on if you're really focusing on reproductive rights, and that's Georgia and Wisconsin. And our speakers, you may have other thoughts, but Georgia has a 6-week ban. And if we elect Stacey Abrams as governor, that will be very helpful versus keeping the Republican in place. And in addition, of course, Georgia has a Senate seat up, so working for Georgia is, you know, helps in a couple ways. In Wisconsin, similarly, they have a very right-wing legislature with a Democratic governor now who's very supportive of pro-choice and women's rights. And he's very helpful in holding back the legislature, but there's an election now, so we need to help make sure that a Democrat is elected as governor and as Senate. So that's another state. So I would say those 2. And I think I will put in the chat the link, as I said, to the iRise actions. As a follow-up, there's so many actions out there. And if we want to focus on those 2 states because of the reproductive rights issues, we'll send a follow-up email with some other links and suggestions as to what we can all do in these last couple of weeks. So let me just put that one link in the chat. But as I said, we'll follow up with others, including that one.
And if you get really lucky, some members of iRise actually make house calls to teach you how to do this stuff, as I got one to learn how to text bank. And I'm so excited because all I have to do is go like this. Well, you have to have a bit of a thick skin, but thank you, Debbie, for that. I'm so grateful that I now know how to do it.
So questions in the chat. Well, Chris, you talked a little bit about crossing state lines, but a question I think primarily for the funds is what percentage of local people are you helping now versus people in other states? And I guess a follow-up related to that is what do you see happening down the road, you know, depending on how the laws go?
Let's direct that to Josie.
Sure. Yeah, so before the road decision came out, as a pretty new fund, we were only funding people who were New Hampshire residents. Wherever they were traveling, we were only funding people if they, were living in New Hampshire. After the Dobbs decision and the increase in fundraising, we said, okay, well, now we'll fund people who also travel to New Hampshire. But we actually didn't see a lot of people traveling to New Hampshire. So we kind of threw all of that out and we just said, we're going to fund whoever needs us. And so we have, in particular, I want to shout out Feyla. We had some really great national conversations with abortion funds all around the country in August. And, we all just really talked about the fact that we weren't really seeing a big increase. And so now we're funding New York abortions all the time. It really is New York City that is getting hit the hardest. And New York City is pretty much the reason why our region isn't getting hit harder, because they haven't really hit their capacity in New York yet. But I have a feeling once New York starts really feeling stretched thin or is booking, 2-3 weeks out, that is probably when we're going to see Massachusetts, New Hampshire get hit more. So we've already funded about 40 patients that are completely out of state, not from New Hampshire, not traveling to New Hampshire. And we hope to continue doing that. That being said, that might have to shift if we do start seeing a lot more people come up here. We really have a guarantee that we will meet 100% of the need of New Hampshire. So that would be the only reason we would stop funding these out-of-state patients, is if it would take away from our mission of ensuring every single person in New Hampshire can get funded. But as long as we have the money there, we are going to fund them. I don't believe in wealth hoarding. So I really just think if we have the money, it's got to go out and help as many people as possible, because the need is certainly there.
Yeah.
And the key word could be yet, as Christy explained,
Yeah.
that we haven't seen it yet. Yeah. Thank you.
So another question is about underage girls, and in particular, what is the law in the laws in Massachusetts and New Hampshire about what kind of permissions they need? I don't know who wants to answer that.
I'm going to need your help on New Hampshire, Josie, but for
I'll
Massachusetts.
do New Hampshire, yeah.
Okay. For Massachusetts, anyone under the age of 16 needs a parent's consent. And it's just one parent, but they do need to have consent. If they cannot do that, then they can engage with a judicial bypass process, where they can meet with a judge and say whatever the reasons are that they feel that they cannot get that consent, and get permission from the judge. So, and that just changed at the end of last year by the Roe Act. It had been anyone under 18. So that was a good shift that had happened, was alleviating that for the 16 and 17-year-old.
Yeah, so it's pretty similar in New Hampshire. It is under 18 here, but instead of parental consent, it's parental notification. So they need to know about it. They don't necessarily need to sign a consent form. And again, you can get a judicial bypass. We have a great team of lawyers who do that pro bono. And we haven't really seen as much of that as we would expect to, but we, are ready in the instance that a teen needs an abortion and isn't able to tell their parents about it.
Thank you.
And then next question is if you can talk about the role of a doula in abortion care. What is that role? And
yeah, so there can be two roles. There can be an in-clinic doula, where if somebody's having a procedural abortion, somebody could be with them and supportive throughout the process of the visit, including the procedure. They can hold their hand, they can help them breathe, they can advocate for them. And with a medication abortion, which is an abortion that happens at home or somewhere outside of a clinic, somebody can be supportive of them, either being with them in person or checking in on them, seeing how they're doing through the process, being a bit of a coach and a support to them.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. We do have an abortion doula program, which is great. And a lot of our abortion doulas have had abortions themselves. We have BIPOC abortion doulas that we give stipends to specifically to support BIPOC patients going through an abortion. And it really is particularly a non-medical role. That's a really important part. So a lot of times doulas in general serve as advocates and emotional support, but they are not there to hold any sort of medical role. But a lot of it's just asking, what the patient needs and wants, or just really offering what you're able to. So, I can bring you a meal, I can bring you pads, I can not say anything and we can watch TV together. It's really up to what that patient needs at that time.
So
And Feyla,
Feyla
did
or
you-
Kimika, do you want to check in at all?
Yeah, I actually had something that I wanted to say around it is just, I think one of the most important things about talking about doula care is that this is very important in destigmatizing abortion and talking about abortion and recentering it back into the experiences of people who have had abortions for like thousands of years. Abortions have been around for a very long time, and it's, white supremacy and even like various forms of Christianity have misconstrued people's ability to practice safe abortions within your communities, and the roles of people who would walk you through having an abortion, choosing to have an abortion. It's been turned on its head entirely, right? So having an abortion doula is really about also putting the power back in the hands of the people and not taking it and putting it in the hands of somebody who's not in possession of that body, right? Somebody who's outside and making decisions for you. So it's allowing folks to talk about, I'm having an abortion, or my sister is, or whatever, and not feeling shame or stigma about it. And it's one of the ways that we are going to knock down these barriers.
I think that's wicked helpful.
There's one more question, which actually goes a little bit to this whole issue, the issue you mentioned of barriers and the stigma, which is there research that shows, maybe some statistics about who gets abortions and why? Do any of you have that?
That's a big one.
There is,
Kimika. Oh, sorry.
Jump in, Christy.
Sorry, Christy.
yeah, no, that's okay. I wish I have a slide on this with all of that kind of beautifully broken down. We know that 62% of people who have abortions are already parents. We know that the chatter is usually about unmarried teen folks having abortions, and they tend to be the minority of who's
Yeah.
having abortions. It tends to be the majority somewhere between the age of 23 and 35 that are having abortions. The whys are very, very wide and variable. It tends to be financial and goals in life, but they are all spread over a variety of reasons for that.
Well, and many
Kimika,
of them are
before-
health, right? And no choice because the fetus is not viable. It's
That
right?
as well.
Yeah, I would
Kimika,
jump in.
do you want to weigh in? Yes, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just jump in and say that, yeah, that there are, I would, as a resource, I would say if you go to the Guttmacher Institute, they have a lot of research. They do a lot of this, solely their research. They do a lot of research around the political atmosphere of states, around abortion laws and some of those statistics around who gets abortions. But the reasons why folks get abortions are varied. There's multiple reasons why folks get abortions. There are multiple reasons why folks choose not to have kids, or to parent. Sorry, let me say it that way. And I think regardless of the reasons, the reason with the most percentage of folks that give that as a explanation for it, I think the point of it is folks shouldn't have to explain it, right? Like, this is a decision. This is a very personal decision. It's a decision that they make with themselves, with their partners, with their community, with their family members, and with their doctor. And we as a society have come to look at the life of the mother, the fetal anomalies, as the things that are acceptable for the acceptable reasons to get an abortion, but any reason that a person chooses to get an abortion is a good reason, because they have gone through the process of making the decision of, is this something that's right for me at this time in my life? Is this what's going to help me get to where I want to be and live the life that I want to pursue? So the reasons are varied, and they cross across, and they are layered. There's and so I think it goes towards the goal of destigmatizing abortions, right? It's a health procedure that you get or you don't get based on what is best for your life. And I think the more we can put it in that framework, we can further push this along as well.
Thank you. So we're coming to the end. I see Mary Margaret's hand up. Is it a quick question, Mary Margaret? Who knows?
Maybe. I think that I asked that question about the research. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but I think that it would help us to make it more public, the reasons and the age and so forth and so on, because I think that the stereotype is part of what keeps people on the anti-abortion side, until their own wife needs an abortion. You know what I mean?
I do.
Something to use.
I think it speaks to why we're here tonight, and that is to amplify, to speak about, to educate ourselves and not be afraid of it. It's been an enormously valuable hour, and to each of you who gave yourselves to this, we thank you very sincerely. And for the work that you're doing, we thank you, and keep it up and call on us, because we really, really want to help any way we can. So thank you. Thank you all for being here. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Wonderful.
Have a wonderful night.
And it's being recorded, so it will be available on the PEG Center YouTube station starting tomorrow if you want to access it again. Deb, do we have the ability to, well, you can get a transcript, because that will help with, in terms of putting the information from the chat and sending it out to people. I can't remember whether we can do that or not.
Yeah. You can save the chat I can save it. I'll just save it right now.
Okay, save it. Good. All right. So
And
thank you,
we have
everybody,
everyone's email from logging
being
in.
registered. Yes, perfect.
I don't know if you have.
Thanks,
the
everybody. Have a
emails
great
from
night.
registration.
Thanks,
Thank
Josie.
you so
Thanks,
much.
Feyla. Thanks, Christy.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.